In this lesson, we'll introduce a powerful data structure used by data scientists everywhere in many other languages, especially R, known as a data frame. So you can see this the van der Plas book that we have for our reference and the Jupyter Notebook are your references. So make sure that you go and you check those out. I'm not going to be able to cover everything in this video, or it would be 2 hours long. So just make sure you kind of go through that, the Jupyter Notebook, and that has all the information that's in the van der Plas book. You can see some of the things we're going to talk about today. We're going to create a series. We're going to create a data frame. We're going to create, or we're going to see what an index object is. These are the objects that we're going to be messing around with in this Pandas library. We'll do a little bit of indexing and selection, but we'll save most of that till later. And then you'll see us sort of merging some data together and seeing what happens when we do some, or have some missing information or missing data. Okay, well, let's get started. I've already restarted the console. I have the 3 main data science imports in, so you can hit that. Make sure you put these in most of the things that we're going to do. And I've created. So right now, what I got is a game 1 and a game 1H. So I've created this series, and we can print it. Let's print it off here. So what game 1 is, and if I open it up, you can see it's a series. So that's where Spider talks about what type it is. It's a series object. It has an index from 0 to 3, and I call this AB. So you can see how we did it. We called it name is equal to AB. So that puts a name for that column of data. The next one, this game 1H, is just, and these are baseball statistics, just so in case you've never watched a game of baseball or seen maybe a stat line in baseball. AB stands for at bats, and what we're doing is we're going to give maybe some player names later on and calculate their average and those sorts of things. So you can see game 1 is this guy, 3434. And the index goes from 0 to 3. And if I pulled up game 1H, it has the exact same index, and they're sort of grayed out. And H would be 11221. And H stands for hits. I'm not sure if I said that or not. Okay, so let's create a data frame from those 2 series objects, because really what a series is one column of data that basically we could line up as a data frame if it was multiple columns. So we'll call this game 1. So I'm going to rename this series here game 1, and we're going to rename it. We're going to recreate it basically into a Panda data frame. So we'll use the merge command this time, and we'll do game 1 and game 1H. And then if you just did this, I expected this to work. I don't think it's going to work. Yeah, it kind of gives you this business about there's no common columns to perform the merge on. And so if you were going to merge these based on some columns, you would put left on, and that left would, and you'll get this in the next class, but left would be talking about this data frame, and the right would be this one. And so you'd pick a column out of this one and a column out of that one. I don't want to do that. I want to merge them based on the index. And so if you're going to do it based on index, you put left index and right index. And so that's all we're going to do is basically, I'm going to grab both of these from this. I'm going to cheat here for a second, grab both of those, put a comma, throw that index, and then I'm going to change this false to a true. So this means that use the indices. So true and F9, and then let's see what happened to game 1. So print game 1, F9. So now what you see are 2 columns, and this changed from a series to a data frame because now we have 2 columns of data, and one of the columns is named AB still, right? Just like we sort of started off with, and one is named H, and then they have the names that are the numbers that are associated with each one of those columns. So now we're good there. What if we wanted to create another column in there? So let's get more statistics. Baseball statistics. Let's call it game 1, and I'm going to call it runs. And if you do this, I don't think you can have 1, 2, 1. Let's see what numbers 1, 1, 2, 1, And I don't think this will work. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so it doesn't like this because it has 5 elements, and right now game 1 only has 4 rows. So you have to take this out, and now it works because they line up. I mean, later on we'll talk about you can add rows to it, but not in this fashion. You can't add an extra row when there is no when you're just trying to add an extra column at the same time. So go to game 1. You can open it up and you can see that the vector, or the list that we put in as the column R sort of lines up with that. And that should be good. And then of course we can print game 1 if we want to, just to make sure that it looks right when we print it. And you can see that information. Now what I want to do, so these little hashtag or /pound signs, I should say, sort of keep me in line. I want to rename the index. I don't like this 0, 1, 2, 3. I want to give it a name that I know or I recognize. So before we do that, let's just look at game1.index. Game1.index is a range index starting at 0, stopping at 4, and then step is 1. So let's look at type. So type game1.index F9, and you can see that it's a pandas.core indexes instead of indices .range and then range index. And so what it is it's a panda index type or object. So let's change it. So game1.index, this is like a tuple. It's not mutable. I can't go in and change them one at a time, but I can rename the whole thing. And so what I'm going to name them is maybe, I don't know, Joe, John, Kelly, and Marcy. So we want to say that Joe represents this first line of data, John represents the second line, Kelly represents the third line, and Marcy represents the fourth line. So F9, and then let's print it again. Print game1 F9, and you can see that the 0 is replaced by Joe, and then you can see that line. So now if we just checked out Joe, game1.loc, you should have seen this already. Row is going to be Joe. You can see that it gives you the at-bats, the hits, the runs, and this is because I pulled out just one line, it gives me the name, the name of the index, if you will, and then the type that's associated with it. That's going to give me something. Yeah, it's going to give me the same thing. If I go from Joe to John, it'll give me something slightly different. So I kind of like this version a little better because I don't know, this kind of turns it on its head, that gives you the transpose, if you will, but this kind of looks like what we're expecting. I wonder if this worked. Yeah, okay, so that's pretty cool. So I like this way of doing business anyway. And so I went from Joe to Joe, but you can go to John and get that information. All right, so now what if I wanted to create an average column in case you don't know, for baseball, if I take the number of hits and divide by the number of at-bats, that's my average. So Joe should have a .333 batting average. We're going to create a column that does that. So game 1, a way to create a column is just just tell it to do it. So game 1 hit divided by game 1 at bat. Now, I'm just going to go up here and hit F9 instead of typing in print again. So now we got Joe, 1 divided by 3 is 3. 1 divided by 4 is 0.25. 2 divided by 3. Kelly's got a killing batting average. She's killing it out there. So that's good. And the last thing I want to do is, suppose I have many games, right? So I just don't have this game 1, but later on we're going to add multiple games. I'm just going to give this a game 1, and we'll call it game is equal to, I want every single one of these to be the same thing. So notice that this one, each one of these had a row, a number associated with it was different. In this case, I'm just giving it a constant. So game 1. In other words, I want Joe to be game for this line of statistics. I want that to be game 1. I want this line of statistics to be game 1 for John, and so on and so forth. And so I'm gonna come up here again and hit print, and now you can see we have these are the indices. This is the column indices, if you will. Yeah. So just look at that. Game1.index. So now it's not that. So then we can do type. Type1.index. F9. So now it's an index type, just like it was before, but it had a special one because it started at 0. I mean, those special range ones are still index types. And then let's look at type game1. And it would be nice if this were rows, then it would be helpful for us, but it's not. Unfortunately, this one's called columns. I mean, it would be nice if this guy, this thing that we call index would actually be rows, but it's not. It's called index, and this one's called columns, which I like. I like the fact that it's called columns, but the fact that this one's index sort of makes you forget. All right, so again, that one's game1.columns. So game1.column shows you all of the indices. So AB, age, R, average, and game, and the type is object. And if you did the same thing with index, it would also give you the same thing, right? So it would give you index, Joe, so it gives you the data that's sort of in there and the type that it is. And then I just did type just so you could see that that both of them are the same exact type. So the column, the thing that's sort of representing the names on the columns, is also the same thing that's representing the names in the rows. And so what that leads us to is a very easy thing, or easy transpose that we can do. So if you did type or .t, you could see that, let me just do game1 too. Game1, and then a game1 transpose would be this, where your columns are now on your rows and your rows are now on your columns. So that's I mean, you should be able to do that very, very easily. All right, so let's create another data frame using the same indices, right? So I'm going to use this index is equal to game1.index. So let's see how we can go about doing that. So I'm going to call it game2, and it's a pd.DataFrame. So, and I'm going to use a dictionary in order to do this one. And what we're going to do is we're going to let AB, and remember how you do a dictionary. You put the little braces, and then you put a colon in between each one of them, and then I can put a list in here. So I'm going to let this be 4, 4, 3, 2 to represent 4 at-bats for the first player, in this case is Joe, 4 at-bats for John, 3 at-bats for Kelly, and 2 at-bats for Marcy. And then, so that would be, and it would create that if we stopped right there, but we're not going to stop there. We're going to also give it hits. So hits, again, we'll put another list in, and I don't know, 2, 2, 1, 0 or something like that. And then we'll put in maybe runs also, just so that when we put them together that we have all of that information. And so the runs would be 1, 2, 1, 2, something like that. All right, so remember that we wanted to index this by the same thing that game1 was indexed by. Now, you don't have to do that. You could come back and do just like we did before, where we changed game2.index to exactly the same thing up here, or you could just name it right in here. So index is equal to game1.index. So that what that's doing is it's making the row names be exactly what they were the row names were for the game1. So let's highlight it, F9, and then maybe print it just by F9, and you can see that this is game1 stuff up here. In game2 stuff, I'm missing average and missing the fact that it's game1 or game2 actually. So let's do that. Let's say game2 game1. I think it's a capital, yeah, capital game is equal to string game2. Space, okay, F9. Now let's merge these two together. I'm not going to merge. I'm not going to do the average yet because I want to see what happens if I don't do the average. So let's do that. Let's go in and merge these two together. Just to remember how we go about doing this is PD, maybe PD merge. I don't know. Let's see if this one works. So PD merge. I don't want to change anything yet until I know that it works. So I'm going to do game1, comma game2. Left index equals true and right true. Merge. So that's gonna. Oh yeah. Let's find out what happens. So I don't like it like this because I have game so ABX and then ABY. So if you go back and you check out next classes, lesson 18 is going to talk about this merge business, and we could change that if we wanted to. The problem is these columns can't have the same name, so then it just starts doing this underscore X and underscore Y. And I'm assuming that if we did it again, it would be, if there's another one in there, it'd be underscore Z. I don't like that way of doing business, so let's try something a little different. Concat. So let's try pd.concat. So if I concatenate these two things, and then you got to concatenate once a list. So game1, comma game2. I wonder if that'll work. Maybe if we put, I think you have to do this now. So in the past, you didn't have to put this sort stuff, but now you do. You got to basically tell it that you want it to sort so that you can index stuff, right? So let's see if that looks like. So now I have Joe, so I have all the at-bats for Joe. Game 2 is different than game 1, that's good. I got the hits for Joe for game 2. We don't have the average, that's fine. And check out what it does. It gives us a not a number. Remember that from NumPy. So what we'll do is we'll fill in the not a numbers later on. We'll come back and recalculate all these things. So let me come back up. We're going to call this games equals that guy. We'll do games average is equal to games, what was it, hit divided by at-bat. Print it again. I'm just going to highlight it and press F9. And then we see, hopefully, that all the math turns out correctly. So Marcy didn't get a hit in game 2. So she was 0 for 2, so that's a 0. That's fine. 1 out of 3. 2 out of 4 is 500. 2 out of 4 is 500. 1 out of 4 is 250. Okay, so it looks like the math all worked out. Okay. Yeah, so redo the average. We're going to now do a summary. We're going to do some summary statistics. So in here, stats, I want the annual statistics. So if I were to now, right now I only have game 1 and game 2 in there, but I could have game 3, game 4, game 5, blah, blah, blah. I could have as many sort of games as that I wanted to in this thing. And I claim that I could come back and then summarize all this stuff and then get the real, what the new average is, and it would add up all the runs that you scored throughout the year and so on and so forth. So that's what I want to do. I want to create something that does that real quick. So it's games.group by, and we will group this sucker by its what's called its level. So level 0 is your index here. So that's something that I don't think he even talks about in the so that would be level 0. Level 1 would be sort of 1 up from that. Anyway, so level 0 would be the indices by row, and then we want to do what? We want to maybe sum these, F9, and then I'm just going to highlight stats and print them out. F9, and you can see that Joe had 3 here and 4 there, so 7 makes sense. And John had 4 and 4, which is 8. And then Marcy had 2 and 4, which is 6. But the problem right now is that I added, so I did the dot sum, and so it's going to sum everything, right? So it's summing the hits, which makes sense. It's summing the runs, which makes sense. It's summing the at-bats, which makes sense. But the average, summing the average doesn't make any sense, because eventually you would get something like this where you're above 1. So because that doesn't make sense, we'll come back and we'll yeah, so I even talked about it down here. So note that the average doesn't make sense, so we'll recalculate it. So stats average is equal to bat. So stats hit divided by, okay, make sure that, and now we'll print it off again. F9, and you can see, let's see, hits 3 out of 7, 3 out of 8, 3 out of 6. Okay, so it makes sense now. All right. So we've shown that how you go through. So we've indexed through. Okay, what if we wanted to sort? So stats dot sort underscore values. Not sort. Sort values. Then you tell it what you want to sort it by, and I don't know, maybe I'm interested in average, capital A, average, and that one. So it sorts it by the smallest on top. I don't like that. Maybe we ascending equals false. Sorts it the other way. So Kelly's got the highest batting average. She's batting 500. Joe's batting 428. John, and then Marcy's bringing up. She's only 1 for 6. All right, so that's how you sort. Suppose we had another statistic that we wanted to pull into this thing. Maybe we have something like maybe home runs is equal to, and suppose that you don't have everybody's. So I shouldn't say everybody. So suppose everybody hasn't hit a home run yet. So let's do that. Let's say PD.series 1, 2, where index equals home run. And Joe hit the 2 home runs. Does Joe got 2 hits? He's got 3, so that's good. So Joe, Kelly's got at least 1 hit. Yeah, everybody's got at least 1 hit. All right. We just wanted to, I don't want to make this thing baseball inaccurate, right? Because you can't hit 2 home runs if you only have 1 hit. So Marcy couldn't have had 2 home runs. And the other thing is 2 runs. So Joe is hit 2 home runs, and nobody was on base because, okay, anyway. All right. So we got that going for us, and then print home runs. Oh, I didn't give it a name. So name equals HR. Looks like. So now it has a name instead of just a D type. Let's pull this in. Let's do pd.merge stats, home runs, left, true, right index equals true. Again, I don't want to mess this thing up before I know that it works. So that's why I'm not setting it equal to anything yet. So I'm just going to see what it does, and then how equals left. Now, what does that mean? It's a left merge. It's going to include everything that's in the stats data frame and only the home runs where they're equal. So that's what the how's doing. And we're going to hit the fill enable. We'll worry about that here in a second. So everything in the stats, which is what it did. It gave you Joe, John, Kelly, and Marcy, and only the HRs that married up, right? So if I had another one, here, let's do this. Let's put in 3 or 4, and let's give them somebody else. Let's say Jason. Jason has 4 home runs. And let's try this. Notice that Jason's numbers, so let me throw HRs in there, F9. Notice that Jason didn't get put in here. That only grabbed the two that were, because that HAL says left. Everything that's in stats and only the things in HRs that matches up with stats. That's what that HAL left. If we do HAL right, it should be the other way around, where it grabs all of the. So now it grabs everything is on the right, which are these three names, and then does not, and grabs all the statistics is associated with them, but doesn't grab the ones that are in the left one, right? So only the ones on the right, and then grab the left ones where that stuff matches up. Obviously, that's not what I want to do. I want to do something like this, and then we need to do it dot fill in A. So dot fill in A. If you remember from NumPy, if I give a 0 on there, it'll just fill it in with zeros. So we can now say stats is equal to, and I'm just going to copy paste this sucker in. F9, and now we have changed stats. So we have the new, the home run stats. All right, that's all I got for this lesson. I hope you guys got something out of it. I'll see you next time.